Hello, and thank you for joining us for the latest episode of Discuss with Russ. I'm Russell Rivera, founder and president of Voice Wealth Management, and my guest today is George Bischof of Bischof and Bischof LLP. Our topic today is preparing your will as a new parent. For those of you tuning in for the first time, the Discuss with Russ series has focused on helping you get through the crisis and start thinking about all the other aspects of life that can have large effects on your financial situation. We want to help you take advantage of opportunities, manage risks, and avoid pitfalls so you are most likely to succeed. Voice Wealth Management, my firm, primarily works with entrepreneurs, young professionals, and their families to help them get the most out of their money. While I'm a chartered financial analyst and certified financial planner, many also see me as their personal CFO and financial therapist, recognizing the psychological power of money, in addition to using short and long-term planning to help you get the most out of every dollar you earn and use. Now to our guest, George Bischof. George is managing partner of Bischof and Bischof LLP. As a wills, trusts, and estates attorney, he helps families with some of the most important aspects of financial and family responsibility. His approach helps clients protect their loved ones while preserving wealth and express their deepest commitments and values. His undergrad is from Amherst, and he graduated from Yale Law in 1993. With that, George, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Russ. Great to be here.
So I read the bio you sent along, and it really seemed that we're aligned on the expressing client values part of our practices. So you through, I guess, the documents you create for clients, and me in terms of how people use money. So tell me a bit more about what that means for you.
Great question. When I think about values, a lot of what I'm really getting there is the question of doing some discovery about my clients' objectives and what's important to them. And that varies, from client to client in ways that I think sometimes may not be obvious to them. But, for the young families, it can be as things like it's very important to have family only as guardians and trustees. It might be making sure that the children stay in their particular schools, wherever those might be, or, grow up in the New York region. It's a matter of finding out my clients' priorities and making sure that those priorities get reflected in the documents.
Fair enough. So one of the reasons I did want to talk with you today had to do with some recent focus you paid to new and growing families around wills and that process. And I have some clients as well that are, new and growing families. And it seems that your thoughts on this approach from a different place than a will of a parent whose kids have left home. So I've been, like I said, I've been trying to counsel some clients who are, related to that situation and need to get things done and often don't because, they're 35 and they just don't think they need to. But what are some of the unique considerations that this type of client has that older clients don't?
Yeah, great question. And that's a matter of sort of meeting clients where they are, right? When I think of younger families, one bright line distinction is are there minor children, right? If you have any children under 18, or if it's a relatively new family, all the kids will be under 18, we're going to need to name guardians, someone who can change diapers, get kids to school, deal with driving lessons, piercings, tattoos, and the path to college. For folks who are older, even if they have children, we talk more about wealth transfer, which could involve trusts and possibly gifting to grandchildren. For my folks who are early on the arc of family building, we get some very specific concerns about dealing with those minor children.
So, you started to hint about one of those. And for me, when I'm talking to my clients, it's always, all right, what's going to happen, right? The reason to do it is what are you going to have happen if you get hit by a bus, right? There's always the hit by a bus. I don't want to call it an analogy. It's not an analogy, but right. The hypothetical, I guess, right?
Our disaster scenario.
Exactly. And you started to touch on one, and the first thing obviously being who's going to care for the kids, how and where. So what typically goes into those decisions, that people need to think about before they even walk into your office?
Great question. For many of the folks who've taken the time to get my name or ask for a referral to an estate planner, they've given some thought about, well, if I'm not here, who's going to take care of this child? A lot of my work is sort of explaining whether that's a good fit or not, which, people say, well, my sister's in London or my parents are in Tokyo. And there are issues even with first choices. and then getting beyond first choices. I'll say, well, what if that person's not available or not around? And they'll say, well, I hadn't thought of that. I say, well, that's my job to think of that. Who's in line behind your beloved sister, your trusted mother, your college roommate in terms of potential guardian.
Fair enough. Another thing I think about is a lot of times. So my experience with it, I guess, is in terms of on the money side, is that you will have people who are not married yet in an IRA account, for example, make their beneficiary their parents. Obviously, as they go through the life cycle, get into serious relationships, and then have kids, that changes from the parents to spouses and children, which in the unfortunate situation may leave a kid with a lot of money or too young to manage it.
Sure.
So what are the options, I guess, that exist in that type of situation?
So that's really a parallel lane, if you will. We're thinking about what the courts in some states call the guardian of the person when we talk about guardians, and who's going to do the driving lessons and pick them up from soccer practice. But the issue you just raised is in many ways equally important, and that's the question of who's in charge of funds, which can be everything from soccer practice, band camp, the needs of a person, growing into the teenage years. And some of that's very simple. Any trustee of money for a child is going to make money available for, groceries and medical care. But as we age beyond 18, a good trustee, a good trust arrangement will hold funds for a minor person and young adult so that money is available, not just for obvious things like college, but for development, travel, education, other kinds of things that round a person out, if you will. And that brings us back sometimes to the conversation of values. What is it that you want as this person gets to 20, 25, 30? What do you want to sort of support there? What do you want to avoid, right? And the selection of a trustee and trust terms and guidelines can be very important in shaping the plan.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the right, and sometimes I know people who have I'm always advising that at least clients in their will in this situation are some designated some sort of trustee. But sometimes the question becomes, and I obviously have to leave this to the client, right? When do you want your kids to actually get control of the assets, right? I mean, we can talk about the thoughts of trust fund babies where they essentially, maybe it's 40 or 30 or, obviously it depends on your kid, but how do you know that if you're 5 or 6, if your kids are 5 or 6, how they're going to be able to handle those things? What are you seeing as the typical, the typical strategy that people are using, and what goes into helping to make that, or helping the parents create that option in the will, or decide where that point is in the will, in the trust will?
Yeah, you're talking about issues where a little bit of, and I use this guardedly as you did, what I would call therapy, right? When Mike and Susan walk into my office with a 3-year-old, and they say, well, what should our trust look like? And I say, well, for you don't know your child's money personality, you don't know their issues. A baseline might be to have a trust that says something like, as needed distributions, and then perhaps half at 25, half at 30. And that plan is as good as your ability to pick a trustee who is wise and judicious and will be a good parent like you. So I will often counsel people to say, for very minor children where we don't know the money personality or their needs, your best plan is to pick a good trustee. And by good trustee, I mean someone who will close their eyes and say, okay, what would Mike and Susan do, right? It's not about being the best investment professional in the world. That's a matter of hiring Russ. But you want your trustee in making discretionary distributions, someone who wants to leave college to start a business, leave college to get married, have other opportunities, needs to take a medical break for health reasons, or has a between jobs situation or some other crisis. You want a trustee who is going to, it's hard to get the Goldilocks answer, give just enough that the person has what they need to, be protected and have their resources met, but at the same time continues to participate in capitalism and, have a job.
So how do you counsel people in kind of making, right? Because you have really 2 different decisions to make, right? One, who's going to actually have the care of your children, and who's going to handle the financial matters, right? How often do you counsel that those are separate people? How often in your experience, maybe post, I mean, hopefully this is a very rare situation that it's even required, but that there is some sort of conflict between the financial trustee and the guardian of the child. Like, these are issues that I can see, while they may make sense in the parents making the decision, but after they're gone, they could lead to other issues. So what's your experience with that?
Well, it comes up quite a bit. That's part of the reason folks want to work with a planner or an advisor to get guidance, right? I never substitute my judgment for anyone's, but I help frame questions. But, to use our example of our hypothetical clients, Mike and Susan, Susan's mother might be a person to be a perfect guardian in terms of dealing with a minor, changing diapers, and leading them up through the world. But not very good with money, not because she's irresponsible, but that may not be a personality fit for her. And you might have some other member of the family, Mike's brother or father, who would be a great trustee, but couldn't be a guardian because, he has 5 kids already, or a health issue. So I often counsel people to say, look, we're working on a play here. We're trying to cast some roles, and we want the play to be great for your kid, right? And as we think about casting the roles, who's the right person for that job? So we talk about, what are the duties of a guardian, a trustee, an executor, and who in your world do you think is a right fit there? So that it's a process, which is why, a lot of this is about conversation, right? Getting comfortable enough to speak about people's family, learn the personalities, and help them make decisions about, who to appoint to these roles.
So when, and you talk about appointing to the roles. So when is it appropriate, and when is it appropriate in your experience to even consider a corporate trustee? Is it a certain level of assets? Is it not having anybody you trust who might be good with money? Some combination of the two? What does that look like for you?
Well, several moving parts here, right? It is a fact about the world that the smaller the balance sheet, the less interested and less of a fit a corporate or institutional trustee would be. They are very good about dealing with certain wealth levels, and in some cases, special needs, disability. There are some institutional trustees that are very experienced in certain kinds of needs of beneficiaries. But it's always a balancing act, right? When you have an institution, you don't have that quarterly meeting over lunch to sort of really get a feel for things. So individuals are very good for sort of looking deeper and seeing that there may be trouble there. But individuals have their own families and they're distracted and they have their own fish to fry. So, where you're balancing on the one hand having Uncle Bob do it versus, a giant trust company, there are always going to be pros and cons. And a lot of that is, as I said earlier, balancing act. No right answer.
Fair enough. So when what other issues are there that, younger people, let's call it the under 50 set, just because obviously we're doing households with school age children. What other issues are there that frequently come up in setting up a will or an estate plan for them, regardless of their level of assets? Obviously, the higher your level of assets, the more complex things will be. But in terms of just kind of getting started, what are some other issues that they need to think about that, walking into your office, they wouldn't normally think about?
It's all kinds of things, right? Big asterisk here, we're in most cases talking about a modern family, right? Which may not be husband, wife. It can be all kinds of things. And modern families have all kinds of obligations. So I want to listen and hear, is there someone else not in the family who's being supported or as part of the family arrangement? Maybe that there's a parent or grandparent who is being cared for, whose needs need to be met. Many modern families are blended, right? So if one of the spouses brings a child from a prior marriage, that we have some drafting to do, particularly if that child is older, right? So if Mike comes in with a 22-year-old and he and Susan together, his current partner, have a 9-year-old, what do you do there? How does Susan's assets play into that? So those are the kinds of questions, is to find out who the players are, what the obligations are, and look beyond the immediate traditional nuclear family. And on the family side. And then on the asset side, just thinking, what does the portfolio look like? Is it land rich, cash poor? Are the assets in qualified funds, 401ks, IRAs, which can be in some ways less flexible or have a different priority for what you do with those? So it's always a survey of the landscape. And in young families, particularly as they're building wealth, there may be some things to look for there that are different from where you have a large diversified portfolio, a couple that's in a healthy retirement.
So I guess the one of the other questions that I might need to ask, because again, we've covered so much ground in such a short period of time, and I want to thank you for that. That it's really awesome. Is what other pitfalls might someone not be thinking of? It's really easy to think, okay, I've got to make sure my kids are taken care of and my IRAs have their beneficiaries. Like you said, parents. I again kind of blew my head a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, what if you were taking care of your parents, right? Like,
right.
Wait a minute, that it does have to be covered, right? So what else? I want to hear all the pitfalls so that maybe somebody who's watching is like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't thought about this. I've got to go in and say, hey, we've got to add this little codicil here because it needs to be there. So, give me your worst case and like let's bring it to light.
Yeah, right. In a way, I don't think you and I are going to be replaced by algorithms anytime soon, but there are some sort of checklists we work from in your world as well as mine. The one big thing I would caution all families of any size or age to worry about is, what if the people you're relying on are not around, right? And people
are not what? I'm sorry?
Not around.
Okay.
Right? So Mike and Susan walk in. I said, have you thought about a guardian? Oh, yes, it'll be my sister, Barbara. Well, what if she's not around? Well, what do you mean she's not around? I'm like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? A good set of plans is robust in the sense that it covers contingencies. And so my joke about algorithms, I would say, if your plan is going to be robust, you want to make sure that it deals with not just people dying sooner than expected, but dying in a different order than expected, or in a different situation. The most trusted sibling in the world, who is just salt of the earth, would be a wonderful guardian or trustee, may not be available even if they're alive because of a health issue. They may have their own divorce situation. Their own children may be a handful. And so part of the work I do, where I think we add a bit of value and help people set up with good plans, is to worry it a bit, right? And say, well, what if you are living here and not there? What if one of your children is in a particularly special school that's a very good fit for them? You worked hard to put them in that situation. How do we maintain that? It's a bit of, whether I have them fall off the roof or get hit by the bus or, hit by the pie truck. I try to use a light touch on that. But a lot of the planning is really trying to make sure that if we have some unfortunate events, we have a plan that addresses those. And that, I guess bring it full circle, right, is if that's what needs to be updated from time to time. People say, well, when do I need to update this? And I say, well, when's your guardian going to die, right? And that's a fundamental sort of philosophical level question mark. Your plan is as good as you monitor it. And some people come back to me in 2 years. Some people come back to me after 12 years.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. And we mentioned one other topic or one other thing that might throw a wrench and might force things to be changed, divorce. And so the concept of, obviously it would be anybody who's advising a divorcing client would obviously suggest that they get their own separate agreements and, at the right time, et cetera, or their own wills and whatever at the right time. So, have you seen things that, there's actually contention over what will should or shouldn't be in place? Like I could imagine like how these things intersect in such a way that one person wants the old will to stay into effect and the other person's like, well, I'm doing something else, right? Just because divorces are divorces and we know how contentious those could be. So what if someone does end up in that situation, how does that, affect the will or the will writing plot process or the will that was already in place?
Yeah, it's simple until it's not. The basic rule is that when you become divorced, your will is rewritten automatically to disinherit your prior spouse. But there are a lot of folks who are on the road to divorce or even in the divorce process where that rule doesn't kick in yet. And that can be an occasion to do a new placeholder will while the divorce process is going on. And then I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear me say that, for any person who gets divorced, that's clearly a time to do a new will, right? Even if your now ex-spouse is effectively gone as a beneficiary, you may have people from that side of the family who are involved that you don't want to have involved, either as an executor, trustee, guardian, or even as a downstream beneficiary. Nobody wants to see their ex-husband's, a brother be the ultimate taker. And so there's a lot of, get your divorce done, return your attorney's calls from your matrimonial side, but then call me, right? So it's something I want to watch. But I one more point on that is that, I've worked with lots of clients over the years, and some of them have gotten divorced. And in a number of cases, I've had the good fortune to be able to work with both of them after the divorce to make sure that the planning stays coordinated for the children. It's nice if you can make that work. If not, no worries. But throughout any time you have a marriage or a family either forming or dissolving, the most important thing is to manage that process, but keep an eye on the estate plan, and of course the beneficiary designations on the accounts in your world as well.
George, I know we've covered so much and really given a lot of great information in a short period of time. I want to thank you for that. So tell us a little bit how people can contact you.
Yeah, great. So I try to be pretty flexible. What are the ways to have a conversation with me? Well, it's the same with me as with your hairdresser or your cousin, right? I have a website. It's bishoflegal.com. It's BISCHOFLEGAL.com. You can look me up and give me a call. And in this era of, hopefully ending pandemic, we can do that on Zoom, phone call. I'm always open to a live meeting at social distance. And I encourage people to reach out and begin a conversation. You want to work with, whether it's me or someone else, you want to work with someone where there's a high level of trust, confidence, and a willingness to share. And that's not me for everyone. But I encourage people, to dive in. Any good estate planner is going to talk to you for 5 minutes on the phone, kick it around a bit. So I encourage people to reach out. And hopefully, if you want to give me a buzz, I'd be delighted to take that call. But more than anything, I encourage people who don't have plans in place or have outdated plans to explore the importance of getting things updated.
Very good. Thank you. George, it's been a great conversation. So I want to thank George Bischof for joining us today on Discuss with Russ. For those of you who'd like to reach me, you can reach me at Russell, RUSSELL.Rivera @voicewealth.com. That's VOICEWEALTH.com. Or just give me a call at 646-630-0980. And you can find all of our Discuss with Russ episodes right here on our YouTube channel, the Voice Wealth Management YouTube channel, or on our website at www.voicewealth.com/blog. And of course, look out for our new episode hitting next month. So thank you again for joining us. And remember, it's your money and your future, and we are your partner and your voice. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.